We have our menu system, our panels, our palette set up, and we have a blank canvas. Let's take a look at the tools. A lot of these tools are very similar to Photoshop, or Pixlr, sorry. The one big exception is if you right-click, there are various versions of those tools there. So let's take a minute or two and bring in an image and deal with some of these selection tools. This one in particular is very different from Pixlr. So there's a couple ways that you can bring in pictures into Photoshop. You can just drag and drop it. I'm on another monitor. I'm going to see if I can, let's just drag and drop. Let's try that. In here, drag and drop. And there we go. And when you bring it in, it has these lines. It wants to confirm. And away we go. Now, you're going to get this message quite a bit. We're going to talk about smart objects another time, but the simplest way around that is to rasterize the layer. We'll talk more about rasterizing and smart objects later. Now you can do things to it. So let's look at these particular tools. The move tool moves. What other options do we have under there? Artbook, I'm not too familiar with that one, to be honest. The marquee tool. So if you right click, you can get a square or a circle. If you wanted to select something to make it go away, you could do that. There's some options up here if you wanted to add your selection. So if you were going to make a selection, I guess we have to choose that. You can build it up if something was in that shape, and then you could either delete it, or much like in Pixlr, you can select inverse, and it would take everything else out of the way. I'm going to hit Command Z to go back, and I'm going to hit Command D to get rid of the dancing ants. Or I could always go back in my history. Here's where I was before. Let's go back to where I am now. So you have the elliptical one as well, and if you hold various keys on this, it will do Option key, Command key. It's not doing what I thought it would. But in general, there's whatever they are. You have the lasso tool, which is very similar to Pixlr, where you can make selections and do various things, and you have various versions of that. If you remember the magnetic one, which will kind of stick to the edge of things, so notice how it's kind of leaking out and making its own selection. This one's really good if you keep it close, but if you mess up a bit and it joins somewhere else, then it gets a bit annoying. Double click to complete the selection, and I'm not going to use it. I'm going to hit Command D. If you remember from Pixlr that the feather, first of all, let's just go and let's do this guy and turn the feather up. Notice what I'm doing here. I'm actually not writing in a number, and there's no drop down. I'm doing something called scrubbing, clicking on here and pulling it. So if I do this, 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 and this, and this, if we're going to delete and close, and hit delete, you can see that the feather on the edge is quite light, as opposed to when it's zero, it's a really harsh line. Let's use my history and just go back a couple of steps, hit Command D to get rid of the ants. And here's the tool that it really separates Photoshop from Pixlr. It's the quick selection tool. So Photoshop guesses at what you're trying to select. I'm just simply, it did all this at once on its own. That's pretty cool. So if I went select inverse, boom. And we'll show you something else that's funky. If we choose select subject, watch what Photoshop does. It selected it for me. Now I had a little issue right here, but if we hold the Option key and click on that spot, it removes it. So if I hold the Option key, it turns to minus, so watch what happens. So I can add to the quick selection. And on another day, we're going to talk about this select and mask, which is, if you remember masking from Pixlr, if we talked about it, it will hide things and not delete them. So those are the prominent selection tools in Photoshop. There's one other one here, over here, called the erase. Well, eraser tool erases, right? Kind of erases. But this guy, the magic eraser, it picked the color for me and took it all out. So if you have a, whoops, you have a solid color background, well, you know what's going on? It's on the end of that brush. There we go. It's on the one part. It does it for me, and that, in this case, pretty good. There's still a green tinge here, so that's why masking is crucial, and we'll talk about that in the future. And those are the selection tools for Photoshop that you are familiar with. Let's leave the selection tools there and go on to the next video.